Hi guys, so this video is gonna be about my mom. Um, I don't know. When people usually search up what uh bipolar and what borderline personality disorder are, the one of the main things that comes up is that the person had an unstable relationship with their family growing up. And I think that both my parents weren't perfect. Um, but for this video, let's just talk about my mom. Um, so when I was first born, even as a baby, I cried whenever I was held by my mom, and whenever I was held by my dad, I wouldn't cry, and I'd go to sleep or whatever. So even when I was born, I kind of had a hatred for my mom, unknowingly. I don't know if babies are a good sense of if a person is good or bad or not. But even before that, my mom was very promiscuous around my dad, and at times he thought that maybe she would cheat on him or whatever. And I mean, he met her at a bar, so if you can set the bar as low as you can possibly go, that was what he was aiming for with this relationship with my mom. But as I got older, I was mostly neglected by my mom. And if I wasn't neglected by her because she was depressed, I was neglected by her because she had sudden outbursts of anger at me for no reason. And I think that's because since I was born, I never liked her. And she picked up on that, and even though I was a baby when she picked up on that, she still used that against me. And that's how manipulative she is. And then she would always just send me to my room whenever I annoyed her, which was a lot because kids don't just like to sit there and just act normal or whatever. But another thing she hated was that my dad was trying to get me to learn how to cook, and so I would try and cook on my own, and she wouldn't even help with that. She wouldn't even teach me how to cook. She'd say all you're gonna do is make a mess all over the kitchen or whatever, and then I'm gonna have to make you clean it up. And so I spent a lot of time hating my mom because of that. And whenever my dad was gone, she would transform into a different person. While my dad was there, she would be a little bit talkative, she would be kind of romantic, she would be happy. But every time my dad left, she would get upset, she would get depressed, and then she would gaslight me, basically. And all while I was growing up with her, I was being lied to, basically. The only happy times I had with her was when we went out to eat somewhere at a Mexican restaurant or whatever, or when we went to her Zumba dance classes on the weekend. And that's why I think I have such a love for dancing, is because I grew up doing a lot of dancing, because it was kind of like a stress relief for me. But later on, when I was about 10 years old, that was around the time I started getting into tantrums with my mom. And like whenever my dad wasn't around, I would turn into like the evilest kid in the world. And so yeah, I got used to like staying in my room and like slamming my door behind her and stuff like that. And then when I was 10, my dad decided he had enough of her BS and decided to divorce her on like a random afternoon after school. Couldn't even wait until the weekend. Had to wait after school so that I had to be there while he told her the news. And he gave me an ice cream beforehand, but I was still pretty upset. He told her the news and she started crying, and he didn't want to deal with her belittlement or whatever. So he left, and he left me there all by myself with her. And my response was trying to run after him while I was crying, which didn't work. Because my dad was really self-centered at the time, and all he cared about was making his girlfriends happy. So he left me there with a sadistic crying bitch. And she kept crying all night until she came over and she showed me like the most amount of love she's shown me in like all of my life. Was she sat next to me on the couch and we both fell asleep on the couch together after crying our eyes out. And if that's not a loving, motherly relationship, I don't know what is. And then she made spaghetti, which I hate spaghetti, but I don't know. I thought that was cool because she never usually cooks. And when she does cook, it's just nachos or enchiladas or whatever. And that's about it. And then, yeah, for a whole like 1 or 2 years, we moved away from that house or whatever. We moved to the hood, if you want to call it that. And my mom has like no sense of safety, by the way. Like, whenever we go somewhere with my mom, she goes to like the most dangerous places for some reason, and she doesn't think that we're gonna die or anything. She just thinks we're gonna magically like survive anything. So we moved to the hood, and my dad was gone for like 2 years because he had to go see his girlfriend. And that was probably like the saddest 2 years of my life. Like, I was contemplating ending my life because my dad wasn't around anymore. He was the only one that supported me and the only one that liked me. And for those 2 years, my mom was increasingly more angry towards me, increasingly more just like leaving me alone at the house whenever she went somewhere, and wouldn't make me anything to eat or anything. And so the good thing about my dad teaching me how to cook is that I learned how to cook from YouTube videos like he taught me to. And while she was gone, probably hooking up with somebody or whatever, I was able to learn how to make my own food, which was nice, but I mean, it's not something I should have been relying on while I was still a kid. And yeah, she basically forced me to be like the spitting image of her. She wanted me to be popular at school, even though I tried to be popular and it didn't work. She wanted me to be into cheerleading, which I didn't want to do. She wanted me to maybe do sports or something like that. I wasn't into sports. I still am not into sports. And then she wanted me to go to church every single Sunday. And the church thing, I hated going to church because for me, it was an hour or two sitting there drawing in my sketchbook or whatever because I was so bored out of my mind. Especially since there wasn't anybody at the church that was my age. And it got like to the point where at one point she had to drag me out the door crying because I didn't want to go to church. Because they made like some hate comments about me last time I showed up. Because they thought that since I wasn't interested in the service, that I was a Satanist. And so rumors spread around the church and all the old people there that I was a Satanist even though I wasn't. And so I was literally crying while my mom was dragging me out the door to go to church. And I mean, it worked to get me to church, but after that, I just stayed in my room for like the next 5 days, and I didn't come out to even go to school or anything, so what did that accomplish? Nothing. And then my dad came back, and when my dad came back, I was still angry at him for like a year or so. I wouldn't come over to see him. But he found another house like down the road or whatever. And so I went to stay with him after a while. And basically my mindset during that time was, I've got to show Dad like how evil my mom really is. And so I would like take videos of my mom like when she was being like neglectful or whatever. And I also like tried to get her to like hit me at one point, which did work, but my dad thought it was justified because I was literally like poking her and trying to get her to hit me for like over like half an hour. And so that wasn't my proudest moment. But after a bit, she started like hating on my dad because my dad was like trying to get me more to stay with him or whatever. And she took this as, your dad's trying to take you away from me or whatever. And when I told my dad about this, that was when I finally like got him to be angry at her by telling him like all the stuff that she said about him. So, yay me! And then after a bit, we were supposed to like, they were supposed to have like, me visiting my mom for 2 weeks, or a week, and then my dad, I would visit him like the next week or 2 weeks. And the thing is, I didn't like that. And another thing is, sometimes my brother would come over with his abusive wife. And abuse just runs in the family, you know? But she basically treats him like a puppet. And every single time that we would like meet up with them or whatever at my mom's house, my brother was like trying to like get sober or whatever, but every time they would come over to the house, my brother's wife would be like, let's go drinking, let's go. And so him and his wife would drink or whatever, and my mom would drink, and then usually we'd end up with my brother and his wife ignoring me while we were at this bar, if I could even get to the bar because I was like 12 at the time. And then my mom would go off and then like flirt with a random guy or two and just like leave me there with them. And then I was just like expected to go back with my brother's wife, who always drove, even though she was like shit-faced by then. And we would almost like end up like dying in a ditch somewhere, but somehow God was on my side after going to church for so many years, and we wouldn't like crash into the ditch. But after a while, I told my dad about my, I don't know what you call her, sister-in-law or whatever. I told him about how she would like almost like crash into the ditch, and then he said, I don't want you going with them to drink again or whatever. And so he told my mom that, and then I never had to go with them again. Yippee! But this led to me staying inside a lot by myself, and then I ended up, I think this was around the time that my borderline personality disorder started to show. And some days I would be like super depressed. I wouldn't get out of bed. I wouldn't brush my teeth or anything. I wouldn't eat. And if I did eat, I would binge eat. And then other days, and I would also skip school against my mom's word. Even though she wouldn't even care. She would just go off and do her thing or whatever. And then she would text me and be like, you better be at school. And then when I was happy, I would be at school, and I would try and talk to people, and they would diss me, just like the rest of my life. Everybody just disses me, like, after they talk to me for a bit. And then in, like, my neutral days, I would be, like, super spaced out, and I would be, like, dissociating during class. Like, I can't even tell you, like, one thing I did for middle school or high school because I was just so zoned out, like, every time I went to class. And I had a lot of, like, online relationships that were abusive. I had a lot of, like, in-person relationships that were not the best. I had a lot of, like, older guys trying to get with me back then, too. Which, back then was, like, exciting for me, but now it's, like, gross. And then that was when I decided to want to be a guy. And so I decided to change my whole appearance, and I decided to piss my mom off by cutting off all my hair. And then another thing she would do is she would like force me to get like a haircut that I didn't want, like something that was like close to her hairstyle, like 80s hairstyles or whatever, where they do like the blowouts and stuff and like the curled bangs. And she would force me to get that every single time, even though I wanted something else, and then I would just cry. And so I never liked getting my hair cut. I would always like try and learn how to do it myself. And then I also decided to be emo during this time, even though I was kind of like emo growing up too. And so nobody wanted to hang out with me, and everybody bullied me because I was emo. And I've already made a video on the bullying, so I don't think I have to bring it up again. So yeah. And then another thing my mom would do is whenever we went to go visit my Mexican familia, she would not talk the whole time, and she would like ignore people if she was talked to. And she also said that she disliked anything Mexican, but she would always like participate in Mexican stuff. And she isn't Mexican, by the way. She's Native American, but she pretty much looks Mexican. So I've had to like translate a lot of stuff for her growing up. And then around the time that I was 16, that was when my dad got his most abusive girlfriend he's ever had. And that was when I started like living with them. And also that was around the time COVID started, so I was having to like do all my schoolwork online, and I was having to hang out with them 24/7. And just not a great time. My mom kept sending me a bunch of angry texts because I wouldn't go see her anymore. And then both my dad and his girlfriend were angry at her at the same time. And his girlfriend and him would get into fights a lot. And so I was always on edge, like when I came home, like, are they gonna be fighting now, or am I gonna be able to be like in the living room with them and watch TV or something? And yeah, then he stopped seeing the girlfriend, so I started talking to my mom again. And this was around the time I figured out that I wanted to go on HRT to change my voice to be more deep and to be more like a strong guy or whatever. And my mom was totally like, didn't care. At first she was angry, and then she just didn't care, would not stop me or anything. Another thing she did is she just let me wear whatever the fuck I wanted to wear. And she wouldn't even like stop me about it, except for one day I tested her limits and I wore like a Satanist shirt to the church, and then she told me I had to change, but that was about it. And so I embarrassed myself a lot of the time because she wouldn't like tell me that doesn't look good or whatever, or you're gonna get made fun of for wearing that. And she never gave me any guidance whatsoever. She never told me, hey, I'm sorry you're being bullied, like, you don't need them, you're better than them, or whatever. She wouldn't tell me any of that. Only my dad would tell me that, which is why I stopped seeing my mom. And then I had a job for a little bit, and then this job made me realize I wanted to go to college. So I went to college, and now I see her like every like 2 weekends or so, like when I'm not with my dad or whatever. And like my whole life she complains about this all the time, and it drives me nuts. But she complains about her not having enough money because she works in a nursing home. And it's like, well, why don't you just try and like get like a different job? Like, there's so many jobs in the hood you could go to besides nursing homes. But yeah, if my brother doesn't come back from Alaska to like take care of her, I think she is gonna end up in one of the nursing homes. So maybe that's a good thing. Maybe she just should stick with it so that she's there for when she needs to be there. Another thing is she wasn't like an alcoholic, but she would like come home from work every night and have a glass of wine or whatever and have chocolate, and my dad always made fun of her for that and whatever. But I'd say my relationship with my mom is better now because she isn't as neglectful. Like, she doesn't see me enough to be like ignoring me all the time. So when she does see me, she acts like she's happy or whatever. Or maybe she is happy, I don't know. And she also got diagnosed with anxiety and depression in like the few years that I was like living with my dad and his girlfriend. And she might be taking medicine for it, but I doubt it. But I think she is borderline like I am. And I think that she needs to get medicated. I mean, it's not too late. I mean, she's almost like 65 now, but it's never too late to go see a therapist and get medicated, in my opinion. And so, yeah, and then there's the fact that I wanted to end my life again like a few months ago or so. And I kept telling her, I told my dad, I told my brother about it, I told my cousins about it. My cousins and my dad are like the only people that reached out and were like, hey, you've got reasons to live. Please don't do it, whatever. And my mom and my brother never said a word. And so after I felt better, I like asked them like why they never said anything, why they never stopped me or anything. And my mom said it's because she thought I was joking. And my dad got super angry at that, of course. And he said, even if you think she was joking, like, why would you just, like, let that slide? Like, the biggest thing that, like, people who are depressed do is they joke about, like, ending their lives. And I read in my book and online and stuff like that even if it is a joke, even if somebody does joke about it, like, they should, like, talk to somebody about it. They should, like my mom should have, like, just called, like, the nearest, like, psych hospital and been like, hey, this is what's going on, and I think she's a danger to herself and others or whatever. And she should have just, like, did that, but she didn't. And even my dad kind of, like, underreacted. Like, the thing that we did to, like, combat that was to, like, go see my cousins. And that provided me support for, like, a few days. But then after that, when I came back, I was depressed again because I don't have any support here. Like, I don't have any family here anymore, so it's like, why am I here for? Like, when I had family here, I had, like, a reason to be here at this stupid college, but now I don't have a reason anymore. So yeah, that's the end of my talk about my mom. And you can see why I have a lot of, like, the personality issues that I have is because of her. So, bye guys.